What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao with the news here on TaiwanPlus. As President Tsai prepares to leave office, we take a look at one of her major policy pledges, justice for victims of Taiwan's past authoritarian government. Jeremy Olivier reports on some of the progress she's made and what survivors say still needs to be done.
92-year-old Tsai is one of the few remaining survivors of Taiwan's White Terror, a decades-long period of political repression and suppression by an authoritarian Kuomintang, or Chinese nationalist regime. Tsai told TaiwanPlus he was arrested twice for political offenses, suffering torture and other human rights abuses at the hands of his captors. When he was set to be released, the authorities added another 3 years to his sentence. Collectively, Tsai spent 13 years behind bars.
这路无什么个人的感想，是安那无个人的感想，在威权统治之下，人民的权利并无受保障，连生命财产都无受保障的情形之下，人民哪有什么？
When Taiwan moved toward democracy in the 1990s, Tsai banded together with fellow White Terror survivors to call for transitional justice. They demanded recognition of what they had been through and accountability for the wrongs committed by the previous government. Taiwan was long denied this process because the Kuomintang, or KMT, continued to hold the presidency or legislature for 30 years after martial law was lifted in 1987. But in 2016, a new president was inaugurated who promised to carry out transitional justice. 2 terms and 8 years since, Tsai Ing-wen and her Democratic Progressive Party-led government have made several steps toward that goal. The most substantial, setting up the Transitional Justice Commission, a temporary cabinet-level body tasked with investigating White Terror-era incidents. Tsai's government also unsealed classified archives, removed symbols of Taiwan's authoritarian past, and gave former political prisoners a clean slate.
受害者的罪名大概有5900多件被撤销了，那所以他们得到完整的这个清白之身哦，然后司法上面的记录被涂销，并且在这个前提之下，他们的这个受损的权利，包括说过去被没收的土地哦，不动产这个部分也是过去法律没有处理的，在这一次都把它处理完。
Despite its progress on this issue, Tsai Ing-wen's government has also received sharp criticism, especially for its decision to also go after the KMT's assets, many of which were taken illegitimately when the party arrived in Taiwan from China in the 1940s. It was seen as an unfair partisan attack. Tsai's government was also faulted for not adequately educating the public on the need for transitional justice.
On the one hand, it has institutionalized the efforts to pursue transitional justice. But on the other hand, it failed to make the public has a more deliberative forum to talk about this kind of issues in Taiwanese society.
For those like Tsai who suffered so much under martial law, the sting of those memories are now less painful in the comfort of their homes. But just outside, reminders of that period are still everywhere. Like the tens of thousands of statues of Taiwan's former president, Chiang Kai-shek, who many view as a brutal dictator. There's a huge memorial to him in Taipei, one of the city's most well-known landmarks, a sign of the challenges the DPP government has faced in ridding Taiwan of these markers.
那庆祝威权象征阻力还是蛮大，这个阻力当然是国民党。那最大的一个问题。
Survivors of the White Terror say that the most important part of transitional justice is making sure those in power do not repeat the mistakes of the past and bringing peace to society. Their hope that the outgoing president's efforts over the last 8 years will not have been in vain, and that the fight for truth and justice in Taiwan continues even after Tsai Ing-wen leaves office. Patrick Chen, Yu-Chen Lai, and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Stay tuned all this week as we look back on President Tsai 8 years in office. A man has been arrested on suspicion of murdering 3 family members in New Taipei City. The bodies of the man's wife, 3-year-old stepson, and mother-in-law were found on Saturday. Officials say they had been dead for more than a week. The man was found in Taichung and is now in custody. Police say he suspected his wife of cheating and argued with his mother-in-law over money. An investigation is ongoing. Real average wages in Taiwan have gone down for the 3rd year in a row. According to the latest government statistics, the average monthly salary in the first quarter was about $1,300. When inflation is factored in, it's a slight decrease from the same period last year. It's the 3rd consecutive year of negative growth for real average salaries. Continued inflation and shrinking salaries are expected to cool demand across the economy. Power shortages are complicating work to rebuild Taipei's aging housing. As John Van Trieste reports, it's just the latest problem with Taiwan's strained and fragile power grid.
In Taipei, last month's magnitude 7.2 earthquake has put fresh attention on an old issue, the need to replace aging buildings. Over 70% of the city's housing is more than 30 years old, meaning it predates today's strict building codes. But the state of the power grid could dampen demand for new builds. A planned substation has been delayed for years, putting pressure on the power supply in parts of the city. Yet demand for power keeps growing in these same areas. The state-run power company wants to make sure existing customers don't lose out as new housing goes up. So, new builds will need to install a remote switch that will shut off the supply when needed, provided they use more than 100 kilowatt hours. Almost all new builds will be affected, as the average household uses up to 3 times that amount. Each switch costs over $6,000, adding to the cost of buying. The power company says this is a necessary move. But this means buyers will have to pay steep Taipei prices for a home that might not even have reliable power. The substation that will relieve the pressure isn't expected until the end of 2025. On the street, views about the policy are mixed.
The
real estate industry, though, says the program won't impact demand for high-end builds too much.
This
is just the latest facet of a long-standing energy crunch in Taiwan. The country is a tech and manufacturing center with high demand, but it relies on imported fossil fuels and is working to phase out nuclear power. The grid's also suffered a series of malfunctions in recent years, leading to blackouts in urban centers like Taipei. These power problems will be among the biggest tests the incoming Lai Ching-te administration will face. Scott Huang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's space agency is planning to launch 6 satellites into low Earth orbit starting in 2026. The move is part of efforts to strengthen the country's emergency communication system in case of crisis. The agency says it'll also bolster the country's space industry. Taiwan currently relies on 15 subsea cables for international connectivity, which are vulnerable to being damaged or cut. The satellite program aims to ensure uninterrupted coverage, which would require at least 120 units. Quake-hit Hualien City is helping traditional market vendors stay afloat by cutting rent fees by up to half.
为期会到半年，那以复兴来讲的话是2个月，5成降5成，那可能之后其他的市场都会以减租3成的部分，一直到年底。
The city's markets have seen a sharp drop in customers since April's magnitude 7.2 quake, with several vendors packing up. 2 markets were heavily damaged and will be closed for 4 months for repairs. The city will set up temporary markets with lower fees for affected vendors. A 2-day festival in Japan celebrating Taiwanese culture has brought together unique cross-cultural collaborations in food and music. Tiffany Wong reports from Kyoto.
We Are the World, a song calling for global peace, performed by this Japanese high school band at a festival highlighting Taiwan culture in Kyoto. The band is a household favorite in Taiwan, having won the hearts of Taiwanese at the country's National Day Parade in 2022. At the same time, Taiwanese people won their hearts, too.
台湾の皆さんから本当に温かい拍手をもらって、その拍手で逆に生徒たちが感動してしまって、もうすごく涙が出たということがありまして、本当に言葉を超えた気持ちのやり取りっていうところがそこにあって。
Breaking barriers is exactly what this festival aims to do, bringing Taiwan and Japan closer through music, food, and cross-cultural collaboration. The annual festival, which is being held here in Kyoto for the first time, is going for a night market theme with dimmed lights and rows of crowded stalls filled with vendors and also visitors. Now, some of the things you find here won't be seen at a typical Taiwanese night market, like this Japanese daifuku mochi, which is typically made with strawberries and red bean paste. This iteration is made with Taiwanese pineapples and white bean paste. Vendors here hope that their innovative food creations can bring the two countries and their cultures closer together.
2日間限定ですけれど、ちょっと台湾と日本がより仲良くなって、味で何か交流が図れたらなと思って作ってまいりました。
On both days of the festival, this Taiwanese sandwich shop had the longest lines. It just opened a branch in Tokyo last year and has gained popularity by appealing to local tastes.
那到日本的特色其实是会使用在地的食材，例如说我们会用这个爱媛的蜜柑，或者是会用七把的花生去做日本的 Gendai 的口味。那但是其实销售的最好的还是我们在台湾经典的这个招牌火腿。
For some people living in Japan, this event is giving them a taste of what Taiwan is like.
台湾にはずっと行きたかったから、それでもう。For some Taiwanese living in Japan, it also brings back a taste of home, but they say it leaves more to the imagination.
I still feel like Japan, you know. I still feel like Japan is because when you walk on the street of Taiwan, especially in night markets, like you can see like people shouting and it's like a little bit chaos, but like coming to here is like a high quality version of everything.
By displaying the best of what makes Taiwan special, the event is symbolic of the close relationship between Taiwan and Japan, while strengthening the people-to-people connections. Kama Xu and Tiffany Wong in Kyoto, Japan for TaiwanPlus.
Rescuers have discovered more bodies in western Indonesia after monsoon rains triggered flash floods. 41 people are now confirmed dead, 17 others are missing. The heavy rainfall sent mud and volcanic debris flowing down Mount Merapi, the most active volcano in West Sumatra province. Rescue officials are working to clear roads and bridges blocked by the mud. Indonesia is prone to natural disasters, with dozens of people dying in floods, landslides, and volcanic eruptions in the last several months. People in northern Afghanistan are burying their dead after flash floods killed at least 315 people. The flooding damaged thousands of homes and wiped out livestock. 1,600 people were injured. Aid groups are warning of damage to the region's water supply and healthcare facilities. Efforts to deliver aid are being hampered by muddy and damaged roads. People around the world were treated to the sight of auroras this weekend, triggered by the largest solar storm in 2 decades. The lights could be seen as far south as the U.S. state of Texas and northern China. Auroras occur when solar winds disturb the Earth's magnetic field, and they're usually only visible closer to the Earth's poles. Scientists say solar storms could disrupt power grids, and new tools are needed to prepare for them.
The power companies need to have ways to mitigate that impact. And luckily, the Space Weather Prediction Center has been working closely with the industry and regulators to help them understand what space weather is and to prepare for it.
Thanks for joining us on What's Up Taiwan. Grab our app to get our stories on your mobile device. And finally, we've got more images of the auroras from around the world. I'm Eric Gao. We'll see you later.